All right. Well, thank you for the worship today. Just sets a nice tone. You guys are incredibly talented, which has some entertainment value, but on the other hand, I've just felt my heart drawn to God. And sometimes it is about entertainment, but you guys just seem to usher me into God's presence. Man alive. Thank you very much. I came with a desire to serve, but it feels like I'm the one that's being blessed by this whole thing. Yeah, and thanks, Tom and Mark. Man alive, I would have come to this if I didn't have a role in it. So thank you guys. Several years ago, I was in a meeting, and it was very boring. And my ADD kicked in, and the bright, shiny object was a question. And the question was this: what would it look like if somebody had their entire financial house in order? Then the meeting became productive because I wrote. And I came up with a 149-point checklist for getting somebody's financial house in order. Point number 1, no. Talk about evil. I would not do that to you. I'm going to give you a couple of those checkpoints today that I think will be the highly leveraged ones that would help you get your financial house in order. You know, there are certain things that if you take care of them, everything else becomes irrelevant. So in other words, you know, sometimes we can have with our spouses, we're worried about our marriage. Well, if we have a date night, that sometimes takes care of everything else. Or showing one item of appreciation for our spouse can take care of a lot of other issues, can change our hearts and so forth. So I intend to give you some of some. It's going to end up being 3 simple checkpoints that I think will take care of everything else. 3 steps to financial independence. And the first one is this. I've titled a little bit differently here, but know where you are, or mind your own business. In other words, mind your finances as though you were minding the finances of a business. So if you have one sheet of paper, there are 4 quadrants here. And the first quadrant is know your income. Know your income. In the last several years, has your income gone up? Has your income gone down? And where are you getting your income? What are your sources? Social Security, rental income, a job, self-employment income. I know I said earlier today that everybody wants an extra $1,000 a month. And we need to be content without the $1,000 a month. But what if we could increase our income by $1,000 a month? There are lots of things any of us can do to increase our income by $1,000 a month. I'm not going to go into it today, but we have helped people negotiate raises at their job where their boss enjoys giving them a raise. Boy, I set that up. Now I need to talk. I'm not going to talk about it. However, you do have a question there at the end. Please give it to me. And I would, if that's one of your agenda items, I would love to talk to you about it. Somebody came up to me afterwards and said, what would it take to have a face-to-face meeting for you to come back to Baraka? And they said, would it take 100 people? Oh, that makes me kind of tired. And I said, 20 is a weird number. But if I told my wife I didn't schedule another time in Ohio for her to visit family in Zanesville because there were only 20 people that wanted to meet, she wouldn't divorce me. Murder maybe, but not divorce. So we'd love to come back. Normally we do have a bunch of individual meetings. And Zoom's good, phone calls are good. So income. Love to teach you how to come up with either how to get a raise or how to increase your income. We work with we do some coaching for small business people. I've shrunk that part of what I do probably down to 5 at this point. But we had a small business owner last February receiving $17,000 a month for their business. And recently they got $53,000. So there's efficiencies you can do in your business, a little better marketing, just how you look at things. And we only do a half-hour call, well, twice a month, so a little bit. But with relatively little amount of time, we can help you grow your business. I turned a financial planning little side gig into something where we have 11 employees these days. So there's lots of good things that we can do. I am too authentic. I'm going to be authentic. And we took off last year 156 days. So it can be phenomenal with the right strategies what you can do. Now I sound like a Tony Robbins infomercial. I'm winging it too much. I apologize. But I'm Dave. I'm 4-letter name. I'm a simple guy. And I believe in keeping things simple. The second thing to mind as you're looking at your own business, minding your own finances. And by the way, if we meet, I'll tell you what I'm going to ask for to get ready. And just going through this process will be helpful in and of itself. The first one, what are your goals? What are the tangible things you would like to accomplish that need money and planning to achieve? Last night we talked about big things. What are the top 5 things you'd like to do in the rest of your life? They can even be, well, in the next 6 months, we'd like to catch up on our bills. Or in the next 6 months, we would like a reasonable investment plan. Last year was not a good year in investments and markets. And feels like my investment guy's selling me all this stuff. Can you give me a second opinion? What would be a reasonable investment approach for my 401k or whatever it happens to be? So your income, so what am I looking for? Here's the things I'm looking for. What are your goals? So I know if we've had a win working together. Hate to get at the end of the year and we don't know if we won or not. Well, your goals, whatever you set, is how we know we won. Second is your income. Third is your expenses. Fourth are your assets, and then your liabilities. Assets are your stuff. Liabilities, I'd say your debts. What debts do you have? And by the way, as a little side note, I had a young couple come to me and say, we're not going to come work with you, Dave, because you're going to tell us to eat top ramen. Well, I would never do that. I'm not going to tell you what to do for your diet unless you ask. Then I give you my opinion. But it depends on your goals and what's going to be the most efficient way of getting there. And there's pros and cons to everything. Everything cuts a variety of ways. And please know with me, I hope not, there's no guilt, no shame. Where are you? It's okay. I'm not going to tell you you're a stupid idiot or you've made stupid decisions. You beat yourself up more than I would beat you up. Where are you? Where do you want to go? And let's start taking some steps to get you there. I don't care where you've been, unless it's hindering where you're going in the future. Where are you and where do you want to go? And let's get you there. Okay? Most people that come to me, there's all kinds of guilt and shame. They may have $40 million in the bank, but they feel guilty and well, why didn't I do this? Or they have a lot of debt and they feel good. Let's make some steps in the right direction. So your income, there's ways that we can boost your income. Second area, your expenses. And I know people talk about, let's come up with a budget, that evil B word. I'm not going to tell you necessarily. Sometimes there's ways around doing a budget, believe it or not. But there are areas that you can cut your expenses. 2 ways that all the inflation has had that people have been aware of more at this point. What I would do is say, if you can make a list, it'll be very helpful, of your reoccurring expenses. So what comes out every month? Things like maybe Netflix, like maybe not Amazon purchases. That may be something that you want to look at. But how much is your auto insurance, your car insurance, your magazine subscription? What comes out on a regular basis? Then it's going to be up to you. It's not going to be me guilting you and say, oh, you need to cut out car washes like we did. I'm not going to tell you to do that. It's your money. It's your decisions. If you want to come up with a little extra margin in your budget, what I would encourage you to do on those reoccurring expenses, prioritize them. Number one, what wouldn't you want to ever, never, ever cut out? And by the way, when there's economic hard times, I remember I experienced one of those where I lost 80 in 2014. In the middle of May, on the 19th of May, we lost 80% of our income. And I went home, and that was fun telling my wife. But she had a smile on her face, said, God's always taking care of us. Why isn't he going to do it now? You know, if we trust God in good times, why wouldn't we trust him in bad times? And I said, well, what we can do, discretionary expenses are like giving. So let's just cut our... Oh, that was a bad word for my wife. She said, when you have economic hard times, why would you cut God out of your finances? Goodness, I thought I'm the one that teaches on this stuff. And she says, why don't we look... Now, this is extreme. I'm not suggesting this for you. I'm Dave. I'm a simple guy. I'm just telling a story. She said, Dave, if we need $4,000 a month to live on, why don't we give $400 a month, even though we've given up our... and just trust God that he's going to make up the rest? Ooh, that was a little painful. But I thought, do I really trust God or not? Do I want to tithe based on how much we'd like to have? And by the way, after that was on May 19th. By the end of June, we had enough to live on, even giving just that $4,000 a month. And by the end of November, man, just God's faithfulness. He replaced that 80% income without getting a full-time job. Wow. I don't understand God's math and his economy, but what I found out, if I do what he tells me to, and I honor him first, right off the bat, he takes care of everything else. He'll take care of me if I just do his work in his way. I know we can't outgive God. Well, if he owns everything, as he does, and he calls us to do something financially, don't you think he'll provide the ability to accomplish what he's telling us to do? Absolutely. Okay, so when it comes to our expenses, look at your reoccurring expenses, things that just come out on a monthly basis. See if there's any adjustments you might possibly want to make. It's not from me to guilt and shame, but we recently gave up car washes and, that's definitely one area. And we gave up the Paramount Plus account. I'm not saying what you need to do. You look at it and pray, Lord, what would you have me do in the area of my finances? Do what he tells you to do. Okay? And I know there tends to be a spender in the family and there tends to be a hoarder. There's no guilt. You both have to agree. You can have an emergency budget committee meeting. And I found when there's financial stress, communication gets louder. It may not increase. Don't make it louder. You have the right to decide however you want to spend. but make a decision together you both agree on. Third area is your assets, things that you own. Fourth area is your liabilities, the debt that you have. There's a problem in our finances if our income is less than our expenses. Duh. That means that our debt or our liabilities, that's a terrible accounting term. I'm sorry, I apologize. But your debt, if your debt column's getting bigger, it's hard to make progress financially. If you're having a hard time figuring where you can cut expenses, I'm happy to help you with that. I suspect you can look at it yourself. Really, there's only 4 things we need money for. There's food, there's housing, there's clothing. I think there's giving on top of that, but I mean, how do we expect to cut God out of, I'm not being paid to be here, so I got a little contract, but if I would have said I'm not coming, that's fine. I don't get any kickbacks from this. So I've just found that you can't outgive God. And God's the last person I'm going to cut out. So giving, that just comes right off the top to the point where I never want to forget it. So we put it on autopilot. So money is always being given. Those, I think, are the only 4 non-negotiables that we really have. So, we have income, expenses, assets, and our debts. If our debt column, our liabilities keep going up, and our asset column is decreasing, that is not a real good situation to be in. And the reason, why would our assets go down? Because we're taking out a savings, for one thing. For another thing, we may view our cars or vehicles as an asset. In one way they are, but they're going down in value. Assets should be going up in value. Okay? So, look at your finances in those 4 categories. How much are you spending? What's your income? How much are you spending? What are your expenses? Then your assets, and that should be going up. The average middle-class American that's doing a really good job, they have no debt or their debt is decreasing, and their assets are increasing on a regular basis. Okay? Number 2, second decision. And by the way, if we meet, I will be asking you, what is your income? What are your expenses overall? How much are you spending? How much do you have in assets? That could be 401k plans, savings accounts, your house. Your house kind of always takes money out of your pocket, but I will ask if you have a general idea of what it is. And then what are your debts? What debts do you have? And I found if we can decrease our expenses by being totally debt-free. Is there anybody here that would like to be totally debt-free, even your house? Well, that's great. Is there anybody, well, I won't ask that. I don't want you to disclose stuff you don't want to disclose. But we paid our house off on January 25th, 2011. You have to be intentional because that is so countercultural. After a little increase in our taxes, because you can't write off the interest anymore, it came to $764 a month. We put that into a mutual fund that only invests in companies that have no debt. We're out of debt. Let's put it there. And that stupid fund, you know, if you do the math, that's been 12 years. Any idea how much was in that mutual fund today that invests in companies with no debt? We took our mortgage payment that we had and we put it into that fund. Any ideas? Great guess. 500? It's about $350,000 for nothing. If we do that another 12 years and retire, that fund, because we paid off our house, well, should have, at current rates, even with this last decline, should have enough money in it to cover all our living expenses, just the interest off the thing. Just by paying off our house. Everybody says, well, you have to have a mortgage. Why? Goodness, we've just found, you can borrow the money and then you can invest it and you can make more. Well, the economy can crash and we don't have to worry about making a mortgage payment anymore. So, kind of a nice spot to be in, and you can also be there too. Okay? Because when you don't have debt, you can accumulate more assets that generate enough income to cover your living expenses, and you could be a full-time volunteer here at Baraka as I am praying that God would give people that kind of financial freedom. Okay, number two here. What are your goals? Where would you like to end up? We talked about the top 5 things that you would like to do in the rest of your life. I would continue praying about that. Where do you think God would have you be in your life? What are the top 5 things you'd like to do in the rest of your life? Go home, pray about it. Lord, what would you have me do for you in the rest of my life? I personally believe and have experienced it that we can't outgive God. And I never want to cut God out of my finances, because I suggested that to my wife when we lost 80% of our income. Well, one thing that we can do is we can cut back on our giving a little bit. And she said, because we only give 10% of what comes in. And she said, Dave, why would we cut God out of our finances when we have a financial difficulty? Why don't we give like we want God to bless us? Maybe she should be up here and not me. But we just found that God opened up all kinds of doors and replaced the income. So, if we are going to make progress with our income assets, income expenses, assets, and our debts, and we're going to be generous, what are the next steps that we need to take? Let me give you, take the next wise steps. Let me give you 7 of these. They should sound somewhat familiar to you, kind of common sense, and you've probably heard them on the radio. The first is set a baby emergency fund, and that's at least $1,000 that you have set aside so you never have to worry about debt again. Number 2, pay off all your debt, use the debt snowball. I know that's a Dave Ramseyism, but list your debt from the smallest balance, not smallest interest rate, because we have to get momentum. Take the smallest balance and and then the next smallest balance, next, all the way up. Pay off the smallest balance first while making the minimum payments on everything else. So this is just getting as focused as on intense. If you have a bunch of credit cards, a bunch of debt besides your mortgage, it can feel very overwhelming getting all these bills in the mail. So pay off one, take what you're paying for the first one, the minimum payment for the next one, pay it off, and keep working your way down the list. It will free up significant amounts of income for you. Number 3, have a fully funded rainy day fund. And that's generally speaking, 3 to 6 months of your living expenses. If you're self-employed, have self-employed income, and it's variable, I would boost that to at least 6 months worth of your living expenses, not your income, but your living expenses, extra cushion. If you're a tenured college professor and it's kind of hard to lose your job, then I would move it to 3 months and start working on some other goals. Next step I would take is, put 15% toward retirement. Generally speaking, that works. If you're younger, it definitely works. So what's your, what income do you have? Take 15% of it, put it into your retirement account. For most people, that works really, really well. Next step, and by the way, that can be a major game change. You heard last session how my son, just with $1,000, can come up with $500,000. Now, that's over 39 years, so it's not tomorrow, but boy, just little bit by little bit, you find all kinds of ways you can save money that makes a big difference. Next step, fully fund college education. Does anybody here have a vision that you can go to college completely debt-free these days? Does anybody even think that's possible? One person thinks it's possible. The only people that get their kids or grandkids through college debt-free, with college costs rocketing, are the ones who say that's what will happen. You have to have that as a vision, or it will not happen, as expensive as schools are. For our kids, they both went to private universities, and we told our kids at first, we have $40,000 set aside for your college. We'll pay 40, you pay the rest. My wife got up in the middle of the night, she shook me, oh goodness, and she said, we watched this movie called, Expelled. And it was about, I'm Dave, I'm a simple guy. This is going to sound judgmental. I don't mean it, Judge. It's just what we did. She woke up and said, if we send our kids to some of these schools, especially in California, where we happened to live at the time, they may be turned against Christ. The best investment we can make is in our kids' Christian college education. And she said, I don't care what it costs. And I said, well, I care what it costs. So we changed from 40,000 because they blow through that in a year. Our kids are 27, 29 at this point. So what we said instead was, we will pay for half. We thought the skills they needed to come up with their half would be the skills they need to survive once they get out. So both their colleges happened to be Christian colleges, about 30,000. So we knew we had to come up with 15. What do you think about a 16 and 17-year-old kid that knows they have to come up with $15,000? Older son went to Cedarville, not too terribly far from here. So what he found out was that they had music teams that went out, and you know how much the music teams offset tuition by? $15,000. He has no musical ability. But they needed sound technicians. So he went to a church planting pastor that he knew and said, would you teach me for the next year how I can run the sound so I can audition for a Cedarville music team? Did I tell him to do that? No. All I told him was, you need to come up with $15,000, and it brought out inner resourcefulness that I didn't know he had in him, but it helped him get a Christian education, from his perspective, debt-free at the end of it. It's remarkable what can be done if we unleash inner resourcefulness for our kids. Other son, he just found scholarships and that covered his half. And he went to grandma and grandpa and said, I need to come up with $15,000 for my education. You want me to go to college, don't you? You little manipulative. Actually, they only gave him $3,000, but that was enough after his scholarships that he applied for getting good grades to come up with his half. Amazing what can be done. Next steps to pay off your mortgage. That's a game change. I just told you what the one guy did that had, paid off house, $764 a month, now has over $300,000, which could be enough to pay which may be enough even to retire on, just paying off your house. Well, Dave, you don't understand. There's tax advantages to having a mortgage. Will the tax advantage put over $300,000 in your investment account? No. We have just been, I was going to say lied to. That's not true. We have not been given the full, honest disclosure on the advantages. Even ministers who have a clergy's tax advantage, we have not been told the full truth, the full disclosure on what being totally debt-free can provide for somebody. Okay, and because my wife and I, we don't have a mortgage. That's why $4,500. We can go on cruises. We can visit our kids. We can take off time. We 156 days last year. We can all kinds of things that you do when your expense is really low, relatively low at least. Okay. Then the fifth is pay off your house. I said that. I'm sorry. Paying off your house and then invest like crazy. Follow God's leading. And with our surplus, we've decided to do three things with our surplus. One is to give. Wouldn't it be great if you go into a building program or whatever at the church and you believe God's calling you to give a certain amount of money, that you could just give it? Wouldn't it be nice to write a check for $10,000 to Baraka? Think about the game. Oh, now it sounds like I'm pitching the church. I'm sorry. I told Pastor Lamar I would not do that. Wouldn't it be nice if there was some charity out there that needed an extra $10,000 that you could just write a check? That is very joyful. So that's one thing we give. We have a special giving fund. Second thing is we want to bless our children. So with our surplus, a third of it gets put into a kids fund. And we don't want to just give it to them. We want them to survive on their own. If you give somebody too much money, it can cripple them and they become dependent. So in our case, when our kids built a house, they forgot that they needed to build a $10,000 fence. And they forgot that they'll need window dressing for their home. So we said, hey, we'll pay for half of it. So it wasn't enough to do it all. They felt the pain that they didn't plan well enough, but it just gave them that little bit of help. And that's really fun for us to be able to give. Then the other third of our surplus, we don't know what we're going to do with it, except we say, Lord, what would you have us do for you? And there's always some type of opportunity that God calls. And it's fun to have a little bit of surplus money where we can just do whatever God tells us to, and we are ready. I mean, all of it's His. If He said, give away 100% of your retirement funds, it's easy to say now, oh yeah, we give it all. But I really consider that at least weekly. Lord, what would you have me do for you? Nothing's held back. Am I trusting my savings account or am I trusting you? Can God take care of us if we didn't have any money in the bank? Ooh. Thank you, Pastor Lamar. You have a well-trained congregation. I would not have expected. Most places I go, people look and go, oh, I don't want to have to trust Him that much. But do we put our faith and confidence in God, or do we put it in our money? Money can go at any time. Financial crisis, job loss, poof, you just don't know what's going to happen, but we can't always trust God to take care of us. So let me pray for you. I'm here for you. I'm sorry this last section, especially this last section, was more scattered. Hopefully you can get something out of it. But let me just pray for God's blessing on you and I'm here, I'm available, I would love to help you personally. You're not going to get a sales pitch of any sort. My theory is there's no such thing as a strong church without financially if there's not strong individuals. So if I can help you take that next step financially, I would love to do that. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, thank you for your goodness, kindness, mercy, grace, in coming and dying for us on the cross. You care for us, you love us, and you provide for us. I pray for a special blessing on Baraka Church and for everyone that took their time on a Saturday to be here. I pray that you will bless them with a deeper understanding of your grace and mercy. May they feel closer to you than ever before. I pray that you'll knit families together like never before. And even as I've heard, there's been some conversations. I pray that if they're spirited conversations, they would still be done in love and unity and knit families closer together than you ever have before. And I also pray for a blessing on everyone here financially. I pray as we're faithful with little things, you would put us in charge of more. And as you put us in charge of more, I pray that you would give us more, and we will be faithful. So please bless everyone here abundantly financially. Bless Pastor Lamar. I pray that your Spirit would come upon him and plant thoughts into his mind as the next step to lead this church. It is a heavyweight leading. So many lives are impacted, not just here, but also in Middletown, Greater Cincinnati area, state of Ohio, and the world. You are making a difference in this world through Baraka, and I pray this would really be a place of blessing for those that come and for this lost and dying world that needs to know you. For I pray in Jesus' name, amen.